Hello, it's Jen again. So last week I mentioned that I wanted to talk about the feedback loop. I'm gonna start by telling you a little story. This game that's playing in the background was a little short game that I made for the library as kind of a community project that didn't really end up panning out, but I'm sorry, I'm getting off on a tangent. The story that I wanted to tell. So, when I first started drawing comics, I had just discovered manga for the first time. Probably when I was around 12 years old. I had always been interested in Sunday morning paper comic strips, and I liked Looney Tunes and Disney cartoons, stuff like that. And I really liked dragons and fantasy and mythology. So those are the things that I kind of like to draw. And then I had a friend who introduced me to Japanese role-playing games on this Game Boy, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and I really loved the manga anime style in those games, the character designs. And so then I started trying to find manga, and I got really into Rumiko Takahashi's work with Ranma 1/2. This was back in the early 1990s, so it was pretty hard. This was before the whole Tokyo Pop boom, and so that was pretty hard to find translated manga back then. Which brings me to another point. The internet was still in its infancy, and there wasn't scanlations to find. There wasn't web comics to read. So when I first started reading a lot of manga and getting inspired by it, I decided I wanted to draw it. There wasn't really any path to publishing that I knew of, and there wasn't other people sharing their comics. They were just kind of like me, and I just wanted to draw the comics. I was just inspired, so here I was drawing hundreds of pages of comics that maybe one or two of my friends would read, and that was it. And I was happy. It was fun. I went on to college and met more other artists. I did have a friend, let me backtrack for just one moment. I did have a close friend in middle school and high school who began drawing comics with me, and we'd share comics with each other, and we'd draw comics together, doing collaborations and stuff. But again, the people who were reading our comics were maybe just a couple people, less than 5 most likely. And we thought about trying to submit our comics to a publisher, but even then there wasn't really anybody publishing manga style comics in the West at that time. So we were still just really doing it for ourselves, for the love of drawing these comics and these stories, and maybe someday we'd like to do something with it. But I went off to study animation because I didn't really see doing comics in this style as being a viable path forward. But that didn't stop me from doing it. And when I was in college, I was drawing comics while I was also doing my hundreds of pages of animating. I was making time to do it on the side. And all this while, I wasn't really getting all that much feedback. I was, sharing drawings with friends. I wasn't even really showing my family that much, and that was fine. Nowadays, I feel when people get into art, it's the very first thing they see is that feedback loop. They see people posting their artwork online. They see other people making comments, they see the big popular artists getting tons and tons of views and tons of comments, and it's setting a really high bar, you know. I think in some ways a really discouraging mentality towards creating, where if I'm not getting this feedback, there must be something wrong with me. When in fact, it's just that there's a flood of stuff out there, and the chances of somebody stumbling across your work in that huge, you know, vast pool of work out there is going to be pretty slim, even if your stuff is good. It's going to be pretty difficult to get noticed these days unless you start doing what I think of as the hustle. You start going to communities and networking, you know, not just saying, hey, look at my stuff, hey, look at my stuff, but saying like, oh, you know, I looked at your stuff, giving, you know, valuable feedback, and then, you know, saying, would you mind looking at my stuff? And there's nothing necessarily wrong with this, but I will say personally, for my personality type, I don't thrive in that type of feedback loop. I find it very distracting. It is addictive. Everybody who creates things likes to see other people reacting or responding to it or making a connection. That's why ultimately I think most of us create things is we want to make that human connection with other people. To feel like our ideas, our worldviews, our characters, our art, in some way is touching somebody else's life, that you're making some type of rapport with another person, even if you never meet them, or your exchange is very short and very general. It's still a good feeling knowing that your art is reaching somebody. However, I think the thing that gets lost very easily in this feedback loop, at least for me personally, was that how I intend to sign off on each one of these segments with enjoy the process. It's very easy to lose that joy of just the process, of just the act of doing the art, of telling the story, of creating the game, when you are addicted to the feedback loop. Because if that feedback doesn't come, or if that feedback is negative, worst of all, if that feedback doesn't come, right? You can lose sight of what you're doing. Oh, why are you doing this? Very easily. It can be very discouraging. And then you could change your focus to pursuing the feedback loop rather than pursuing your own expression. When you start making a game solely for the purpose of appeasing other people or garnering attention, I personally have a really hard time staying focused and passionate about those types of projects. It's a lot of work to put into something that you personally don't feel heavily emotionally invested into. And I don't know if that any amount of feedback, again, at least for me, can really fill that void. If I don't really 100% believe in what I'm doing, I don't think there's any amount of feedback that any people could give me that would compensate for that. I would just feel like an imposter. I would feel kind of lost and confused, like just kind of guessing, like, is this what people want? Is that what people want? Yeah, and I think that there's enough of that already, you know, at least coming from the standpoint of an indie developer. There's enough content out there that's purposely created to appease a certain audience, to try to give them what they want in a very kind of shallow, superficial way. That stuff is mass-produced by corporations who their main objective is to make money, is to, you know, get people to buy into what it is they're selling. as a solo developer, as an indie creator, I don't want to fall into that wheelhouse. I want my primary objective to always be to stay true to myself, stay honest to what it is I want to tell. And maybe ultimately the lesson I will learn is that your stories don't connect to anybody. But for the very few people, even if it's only just one or two people who can connect to my work, that is so meaningful to me, because it's truly representative of who I am. So it's like taking my hand directly, and it really only takes like one or two people to give me that sense of rapport that gives me the feedback that I'm looking for. That, countless number of comments on whatever work that I might have done that I wasn't heavily invested in. Those comments were somewhat meaningless to me. I appreciate any support that I've gotten from readers in the past, but that is just my honest outlook on it. I hope you give yourself permission. I hope you believe in yourself enough to pursue your genuine story, your honest story, and make that genuine, honest connection with others. Pursue something that you can really believe in, that you can 100% feel invested in. That's when I think art becomes a real decompressor. It's when work becomes joy. It becomes leisure to work on my projects, because it is, like I've said in previous videos, it's a release for me. It's a relief. Every day we kind of go through life, and our interactions with people is very tempered. Even people who you might feel really close to, there's going to be moments in time where you, moments of caution, where you might hold back, or you might second guess what you're saying, or what your relationship is, or how they're going to interpret you. And when you're expressing yourself as an artist, everything is, nothing is direct. When you express yourself as an artist, everything is kind of, subtle, and you can make it personal without it being personal, if that makes any sense whatsoever. It can be deeply personal without it being a direct, a reflection of your person. Like you can allude to things, you can hint at things, you can make things interpretive. That can, brush upon aspects of yourself that you might not show to other people on a regular basis. And I think that is deeply therapeutic for myself. And so if I take my art and my stories and I don't make that my priority, if I make appeasing other people and garnering attention and trying just to get views and clicks and likes my priority, then it would become stress, just like in everyday life when I go outside and I, hope that I don't offend anybody, and I hope that the people I work with generally like me, and I hope my family generally likes me. All that little stress like builds up. So I want my art to be a place where I don't have to worry about that. And, maybe you're not at a place in your life or your journey where that's a concern for you. And there's nothing wrong with creating work for the sole purpose of satisfying other people. There's definitely a place and a market for that. But I would just put it out there as caution. Like, beware getting caught up in the feedback loop. If you are doing things just for the sake of positive feedback, it will feel empty after a while. Just like living life to without being your genuine self just for the sake of pleasing others will feel empty after a time. So give yourself permission to be yourself, to believe in yourself, and to give that content that maybe isn't what people would generally think they want, but maybe they will be the rare person who can connect to that, connect to your work. Yeah, those are my thoughts on the feedback loop, and why I personally choose to go the route that I'm going. It's not for everybody, but I think, again, it's a very worthwhile journey, and don't value your worth in the amount of likes and retweets and views that you get, because it really is quality versus quantity. Thank you for those who are interested in watching my videos, and for those who are interested in my game development. Thank you so much, because that's really all I need. It's just I feel really good about that. Even if it was just one or two, again, those are really meaningful to me. So thank you. And this will be Jen signing off. I'll see you next week, and give yourself permission to enjoy the process, whichever path you decide to choose. All right, bye.